Hey, it's Coach Taylor here from SmarterTeamTraining.com. Once again, I sent an email out to a man named Bill Parisi. Most people will probably know the Parisi Speed School as one of probably the premier franchises in our field. And I'm not doing that just because Bill's on the phone there, but from a recognizability standpoint, he's done an outstanding job getting their name out there and having a ton of franchises around the country. I just sent an email out just to talk shop and find out about a couple different things. And as we started talking, I actually asked him to present at one of the events here that we're doing in New Jersey. He invited me actually up to his shop, and we've actually opened up a dialogue with a bunch of different things that we have potentially going on. Again, one email to somebody that's an outstanding professional in the field has led to so many opportunities here to moving forward. And for anybody that's listening to the show here, do yourself a favor. Take the initiative to reach out to anybody in the field that you feel is a leader, and the good ones will find time to give back, and they will get on the phone with you. And again, Bill, man, I really appreciate taking some time out of your day today, and I've enjoyed just getting a chance to know you and a little bit more about the program.
Same here, Rob. It was great to get to know you as well.
So before we get started here, your bio is going to be obviously posted here on the show as far as the content, the written part of it. But can you tell me a little bit more about the man? I want to know a bit about where your passion comes from and really what makes you tick.
Sure. You know, as with most strength coaches and trainers, started at a young age working out in high school and really, fell in love with it. I was an undersized athlete, wasn't that fast, wasn't that big, wasn't that strong, and really saw the difference that training could make. And then, played football in high school here in northern New Jersey, and coach said go out for track, and then went out for track to get faster. And then throughout my high school years, I, really started to excel both in football and track, but the javelin was something I really excelled in. And I started going to, camps, track and field camps in the summer, and then realized I can compete at the Division I level in track and field. And that's really where it all started for me. And then when I went to college, I went to Iona College in New Rochelle. My coach there, Tony Aclario, was an excellent coach, and really started to learn about the Eastern European philosophy of training. And I was so into it, and every day was about training and learning the Olympic lifts. I went to an Olympic weightlifting coach. I was going to every seminar and get my hands on, to a point I realized when in 1988 Tapios Kouros won the gold medal in the javelin throw. The Finns are very advanced in training for power and training, just in a way that really has developed tremendous athleticism. They have the best javelin throwers in the world. So I put a fundraiser together in my sophomore year in college because I was, $20,000 in debt at the time. And I found an exchange student and actually traveled to Finland in the summer of 1989 for the entire 2 months and spent time with some of their greatest coaches, Tapios Kouros, and who's now head of their Olympic committee, and really learned a lot about how the Finns trained and how a lot of people train over in Scandinavia and Europe. And really that's where it all started for me because, back in the late 80s, we were not training like this. I mean, we weren't using medicine balls and physio balls and all these different things we do now. But back then in Finland, they had an open space, open track in their weight room, not a whole lot of machines, a lot of functional stuff. So that's where I got turned on to this training back in the late 80s, and that was really the seed for me to start this business.
I posted a couple of messages here on social media just to always get some feedback as far as what people want to hear. You and I kind of talk about when we're talking about the episodes here. And one of the number one kind of feedback questions, whether it was on email or just getting a message back from everybody, was a question they wanted me to ask you, and it was obviously probably at the top of everybody's question list for you. Can you teach speed?
Absolutely. I mean, and the way I equate this is simply this, and I talk to parents about this all the time. If you have, and you can teach speed to a young athlete and to a fast athlete, first off, from a fast athlete, Carl Lewis broke the world record when he was competing at the age of 31, and Usain Bolt continues to get faster. So first off, there's world-class guys that are currently getting faster, and world-class guys in the past, like a Carl Lewis, who've gotten faster. How do they get faster? They get a little stronger, they improve technique, and they apply force a little bit quicker. So it really comes down to the simplicity of getting strong and harnessing that strength and applying that strength into the ground quickly. Now, how I explain that to an average kid or a parent is simply this. If you sign your son up for a martial arts program, say Taekwondo, which there are thousands of Taekwondo studios around the country. Now they're becoming more MMA studios, but not a few short years ago they were Taekwondo studios, and a kid starts at age maybe 5 or 6 years old. They go into this martial arts studio, they're a white belt, and they learn how to punch, they learn how to kick, and every 3 days a week they go and they practice. And they're just simply going through technique, katas, if you will, punching bags, kick in the air. But if they go 3 times a week, after a few months, they're going to get better. Maybe after 6 months, they're a yellow belt. And after a couple of years, they're moving up the ranks. And in a few years, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, a kid goes from a white belt to a black belt. Now he's 10, 12 years old. He's a junior black belt. Now, if you see a black belt at any age, they're pretty fast and pretty explosive. What did they do? They trained technique. They got strong for their body weight. They improved their relative body strength. And they generated the ability to apply force quickly. So if you can do that in punching and kicking and breaking boards, you can learn to apply force quickly or quicker into the ground, which ultimately will make you run faster. So I'm just talking pure physics here. It's all about physics. It's all about relative body strength. It's all about force application quickly into the ground. And how you do that is honing your technique. Just like a martial artist, if you have bad technique to try to break a few pieces of wood, try to break those boards, you're not going to do it because you're not going to be able to generate force quickly through your fist into the wood. The same principle applies with your foot into the ground.
As we're talking about feedback here, one obviously big question that I personally enjoy asking guys that have definitely been in the business for a long time, and it was cool to see that people were actually had the same kind of mindset here, but it revolves around the term art of coaching. And what's one of the most important elements of coaching in your opinion?
To me, it's all about making a connection with your athlete. I mean, does the athlete, are they engaged with your information? Do they understand the why? I believe giving the kids the why is the most important thing out there. When kids have the why, they can really buy into the program. So when we work with our kids, or if I work with kids, we really want to get feedback from them, make sure they're getting it, they understand the physics. We're not going to go into deep science with them, but we're going to give them, and I think that's what separates our program from a lot out there in terms of how we can connect with the younger kids. I mean, the market of 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, really getting them to make physical change is an art, and the secret around that is getting them not only to understand the information, but to have fun. So, we call it sweating and smiling. Are they sweating and smiling? Are they having fun? And obviously, as the kids get older into the teens, the high school, college athletes, they're sometimes, just as challenged to make that connection, depending on their frame of mind. But it's the same thing. It all comes down to getting them to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, getting them to enjoy the process. That doesn't mean we show them hard love and enforce their discipline to make sure they're doing things correctly and have them redo drills. But it's important that they get it and they really understand why they're doing it.
How does motivation impact success of the individuals that you've had a chance to work with? And how do you develop a motivational plan for each individual athlete?
First off, we really talk about an athlete's goals, and every kid that comes into our facility, we obviously perform a performance evaluation, and we get numbers on them. So it's like a pre-combine, if you will. We'll do the 10, 20, 40, vert, broad jump, 5, 10, 5. We'll go through all the performance drills for all of our athletes, all ages. And we have a whole ranking system in our program where each test we actually give a point. It's kind of like the decathlon. We have a point system, anywhere from 1 point all the way up to 166 points for each test. And we categorize the points, or we put them into a program, if you will, and then we get a composite score, and then we rank them accordingly. So we have them in what we call our CAT club, and instead of a belt system, we use a CAT system where the cheetah is our black belt, if you will, and our bobcat is our white belt, and we have all the cats in between. So from a motivational standpoint, the younger kids really get into that, and the older kids obviously get into their point totals just to see how many points they have that really measures athleticism. So from a motivational standpoint, we really like to use the numbers. We like to have measurable goals because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So it's really important to be able to measure and get feedback. And we do testing usually every 60 days where we'll do follow-up testing and Cat Club challenges on average to continue to move a kid along. But then again, we're also going to map these Cat Club challenge goals or these composite score goals, if you will, to their overall sport goal. It all also comes down to ultimately their sport and what they're looking to accomplish. So we're going to talk to them about their sport goal. We're going to make sure they write those goals down, their Cat Club challenge goals, their sport goals. We're going to make sure that it's with them all the time. We actually hand out little motivational cards where they write down their goal on a card, and it's with them all the time. We want them to carry it with them all the time so they see it every single day. And when we talk about goals and motivation, a lot of it's common sense, but common sense isn't too common. It's just applying the fundamentals. It's blocking and tackling, man. You know, the teams that block and they tackle, they don't give up big plays, they're going to win the game. And the same thing goes with this stuff and being successful and having a great performance program. Sometimes I think we try to get too far outside the box and try to do too many things that are way out there. You know, we've been all about fundamentals, execution, the basic principles, whether it be around goal setting, training, and just be consistent with that and deliver a great experience, a great service, and make a strong connection with your athlete. And, you know, people are going to talk about you. Your brand's going to grow, and great things happen to great people.
I know we're into combine training season here, and I know you guys do a great job with your combine prep program, and I want to talk about one aspect. It's probably the part that gets the most visibility anyways, the 40-yard dash. And I want to talk about just the one small aspect of it, the starting mechanics. Are there some overlooked aspects of the teaching of proper starting mechanics that you've seen?
No doubt. I mean, I think that the biggest challenge or where people can make the biggest improvement is really understanding the stance, the start. It all starts with the stance. I mean, you've got to be positioned in the right stance. If you're not, you're never going to get that first step to be on. If that first step is off, it's very hard to overcome a bad first step, and then it's hard to make up in the second half of the race, because if your first step is off, your whole 10-yard dash is going to be off. Your 10-yard time is going to be off. Now, that start is really not an easy thing, and that stance, you got to be strong. You got to have like gymnast strength to really get in the optimal stance. And that's where a lot of people, miss out. You got to have your hand on that line, your front foot not too far behind, about maybe, anywhere from, I would say, 4 to 8 inches, depending on your height of the athlete, that front foot. And then that second foot, right at the heel of the first foot, the toe of the second foot right at the heel of the first foot and to the side a few inches. And then you got to have those shoulders, way over the line. And you got to be strong, and that back has to be flat and parallel to the ground. And when you get in that stance with your shoulders way over the line, you got to be really strong, have a lot of relative body strength. So all your weight, your center of gravity is actually over the line, before you even start. So really positioning that center of gravity over the line with your hand, on the line. And, it's a hard position to hold. Even if you're super strong, the best can't hold it more than a few short seconds. And by doing that, that's like loading up a spring. It's like you're loading up this spring that's just waiting to explode out. And if you do that correctly, you will blast an all-time best in your 10. And then ultimately, if you run your best 10, you've got a very, very good chance to run your best 40. Obviously, your top end, your second half of the race has to be in sync, and you have to have that elasticity, and you have to master that leg recovery, because that, in top end speed, it's all about leg recovery. It's a big part of turnover, because the more efficient your recovery is, the faster your leg's going to come through, and the greater the force you're going to be able to apply into the ground.
Again, I know this time of year, a lot of people are trying to use a lot of different speed training tricks or equipment or some other type of something to give their guy an edge or their young lady an edge if they're doing high school combine type stuff, or evaluating the young athletes as well. But, I mean, what are some advantages or disadvantages of using some various types of speed training equipment?
That's a great question, Rob. And I believe in equipment. Obviously, we use it, but you really can't start using a lot of equipment until your technique is fundamentally sound. So if you're going to start overloading poor technique, running mechanics technique, you're actually ingraining bad habits. So first and foremost, before we even want to bring equipment into the picture, that's why we don't use a lot of equipment with our younger athletes. Athletes are really just working on running mechanics. Our program, we look at the Parisi program, we're a martial arts program for speed. I mean, that's ultimately what we are. I mean, we really focus on, 4 areas of speed development. We focus obviously on linear speed, which is acceleration and top end speed, which is a big part of linear speed. There's 2 components to linear, and those are separate training modules and separate training sessions, and there's a whole curriculum around those 2 elements of linear speed. And then we focus on change of direction speed, and change of direction speed is all about deceleration and reacceleration in multiple directions, and those are, fundamental principles and techniques and strength foundation that has to be mastered before we add equipment. So, you really got to understand first, before equipment, we've got to master technique and have a high technical aptitude of what's going on in the human body, what's happening. And even at a young age, 10 years old, if a young kid can learn to be a black belt in martial arts and Taekwondo at 7, 8, 9 years old and can be really good at that sport and get into a ring and have a competition and fight with someone for points and not know the stimulus, not know where it's going to come from, visually, and react, we can do that with speed. And that's what we do. It's technique, technique, technique. And once you hone that down and teach the different elements like a martial artist, then you can really enhance your performance. Once we're, maybe brown belt or advanced with technique, now we can start to overload. We can start to use some resistance running, some parachutes, some all the, toys that are out there which are great. We can start to overload technique, but we don't want to overload the movement, I should say, until we have a fundamental sound technical aptitude to be able to perform the drill correctly or the sprint correctly. And I also think, it's important to reach great technique. The intensity levels can't be all out. It's funny. I just was working out with my son the other day. He's 12 years old. We'll go out and run. We'll run 40s. We're in the club running some 40s, and we'll work at 95, 98% intensity. Running our 40s. It's all about technique. I mean, the guy that really made that famous is Herschel Walker. I mean, I spoke to Herschel Walker, and when he trained and whenever he did on any of his interviews, talks about whenever he went out and ran, he trained, he practiced, he never ran all out. He always stayed, 1 or 2 percentage points below that 100% because it's all about running controlled, relaxed, and really maximizing. And, even with our little informal testing or studies we've done, with the hundreds of thousands of athletes we've trained, typically when you have an athlete run a 40 and you say, okay, give me a 98% effort here, and they run a time, okay, now give me an all-out effort now. A lot of times the all-out effort's slower than the 98%. It comes down to force application and how do you maximize the ability to put force into the ground quickly. You have to maximize your technique to be able to harness and synchronize the muscular system, the musculoskeletal system, and the neurological system, the neuromuscular system, to work and to sync and to make sure we're firing the muscles we should be firing and relaxing the muscles we should be relaxing.
I've had a very unique opportunity to go around and see a lot of strength conditioning type programs and watch them do not only the strength component in the weight room, but conditioning on the field or on the court and that type of thing. And I've also had a chance to watch them do their speed training and what they consider speed at training. A lot of times I've seen speed training become conditioning, especially if the head coach is out there. There's not a lot of rest being allowed because they just want the tempo to keep on moving kind of thing. Can you do me a little bit of a favor here and explain a little bit about how your in-season and your off-season speed training program would differ?
That's a great question. And, with my conversations with different college strength coach and professional strength coaches, because, I've developed a great relationship with many of them over the last number of years. It's interesting because I believe in the winter, I think a lot of guys kind of mix it up. I believe in the winter is a time to really work on technique. It's a time, obviously, to get strong and get super explosive and really work on quality of work and not so much conditioning. Because the season is so far out, if you're a football player, why are you worrying about getting in great condition in February and March? I really think the level of explosiveness should be worked on and sprint technique and change of direction technique. When we talk about quality of work and improving performance, football, it's an average of 6 seconds, right? And then you get a 25, 30-second rest period. We need to condition that way. But in the winter or the in that off-season training, when we're doing change of direction, it should be technique. When we do change of direction training, there's a lot of technique involved. I mean, we're doing different types of cone drills. We're working on those techniques. We are taking enough rest to optimize the technique. So an example would be a 5-10-5 drill, the pro shuttle agility drills, that they do at the NFL Combine. Well, we might do 10 reps, right, of those drills, but we're going to take enough rest so we can run a great time on every drill. So that might be a change of direction, session or an agility session where we do an active warm-up, which is a good 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Then we'll do, 10 reps of a 5-10-5, but we'll really give enough rest periods so every one we can explode. And we're optimizing technique of that drill. We're really understanding center of gravity management. We're really understanding where the feet are in relation to the center of gravity, where the force application is taking place, and really thinking about the mechanics of change of direction. We're thinking about deceleration. The athlete is actually thinking about the technique and change of direction, thinking about deceleration, thinking about managing his center of gravity. With your question about conditioning, I think when we're conditioning athletes, a lot of times these athletes are enforcing bad habits with their change of direction technique. And at the end of the day, I'd rather have a faster, explosive athlete that might be a little tired than a real conditioned athlete that can't create separation on the football field or can't close, because it's all about making plays. At the end of the day, we want our guys to make plays. So to ask me, if I had to sacrifice a little bit of conditioning for explosive power, I would rather have that explosive power. So, ultimately you want both. You want guys to have both. And believe me, in the summertime and in that preseason, come June, July, August, that's where you're going to really condition the heck out of them. So that shouldn't be an issue. Because that's the time to condition them. But let's get them strong. Let's get them explosive. Let's get them really tuned up technique-wise and strength-wise and power-wise in the winter in those early months. And then in the summer, we have that foundation of strength. We have that foundation of technique. Now let's condition the heck out of them, as the season is approaching. So that, to me, that makes the most sense. That's our philosophy. That's what we go by. And, hopefully that helps some people out.
My next question here is kind of a two-parter, and it revolves around the concept of overtraining and the rest and recovery regeneration type scenario. And the conversation I've had with a lot of people, which has kind of made me think a little bit harder here, is a lot of people have been talking about this concept of overtraining, and how much can we actually do before overtraining sets in. And another kind of mindset was, I don't think we do. We actually under-recover. And the importance of recovery has been kind of put to the wayside because we try to do more and more and more in our culture. That concept of if I tell you to take one aspirin, you end up taking the bottle kind of scenario. How do you go about avoiding overtraining in your athletes and within your program? And then how important is the rest and recovery aspect of your training?
I think this is one of the hottest topics out there right now, and from our history and training over 130 guys that have gone and drafted into the NFL, and guys we prepped for the Combine, and the guys we're prepping now. And, it's all about recovery. Most guys that come in, if they are following the programs to the T, they come in a little overtrained. Guys are really, really banged up, and I think a lot of coaches have some challenges in terms of they got to keep their guys busy at the college ranks, and they got to keep them mentally tough, and they're trying to build that mental toughness with them, and really work them. And I think that can get challenging because I don't think every athlete is the same. I think some guys can take more volume than other guys, and it's hard to separate guys, if you're a college or professional strength coach. Maybe at the pros you can separate them a little bit more in terms of, the unique volumes and rest periods. But, when we look at athletes, we categorize them in a few different ways. We look at your wideouts and your D-backs and your running backs. We look at those guys like cheetahs, and they tend to need more recovery. Their nervous systems, they get maxed out. A cheetah goes out for a hunt. He's sleeping for 3 or 4 days. He's resting. And I think, the DNA of these guys and these guys that are fast twitch, they need a lot more recovery because their nervous system, when they get taxed, man, they're done. And when you overtrain those guys, they start to they don't have the explosiveness they normally would have. Now, your other guys like your linebackers, your tight ends, your fullbacks, these guys are like rhinos. They can take a little bit more volume. They got some pop, they got some explosiveness, but they're not that cheetah. So they can take some more volume. Their recovery might not be as much as that cheetah type athlete. And then you've got your elephants, your linemen. These are big, strong guys. They're not creating force that is, ultimately, I should say, a whole lot of power. They're strong. They're generating a lot of force, but their overall power is maybe not as much as the younger athlete. I'm sorry, not the younger, but the lighter athlete or the cheetah athlete. Pound for pound, that is. Let me make that clear. As much power pound for pound if you measure those guys equally in that sense. So what I'm saying, those guys can, have more volume or probably don't need as much recovery as those rhinos or cheetahs, those tight ends, fullbacks, and or those, running wide receivers, D-backs. So that's important. So I think we need to look at recovery. I think we need to look at it individually. I think from an athletic standpoint, from athletes, sleep is the biggest missing component. Athletes aren't sleeping enough. They're not getting the quality of sleep, REM sleep. That's important that they get the REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, where they're really in that phase. Their body's physically repairing. I've done some interesting research on sleep, and the stuff out there is really amazing. And there's still stuff they're learning. I think lack of sleep and sleep apnea is probably one of the reasons why we have a huge health crisis on our hands in this country and why we have so many unhealthy people, because if you lack the proper sleep, you're going to be fatigued throughout the day. And if you're fatigued throughout the day, you're not going to exercise. And if you're not exercised and fatigued, you're just going to eat junk. You're laying around, and it's just a vicious cycle that repeats itself. So sleep for athletes is so important. I think that's a missing link there that we need to stress. We need to share the science with athletes. We need to let them know and let them understand that that's when, protein synthesis is taking place the most. That's when the little, masons are in the body laying down that block with their cement and bricks and building up the tissue. And these guys, the only time they're really working at full steam is when we're in a good REM sleep and we're really deep and taking advantage of that. So along with nutrition and hydration, the pre and post workout shake is another thing that more and more kids need to have at every age. My kids are 10 and 12 years old, and they need to drink some type of shake, before, after workout. They use it as a meal replacement because these kids are on the go. I'm just talking everyday kids. These kids are on the go at every level. Man, a lot of these kids, I see my kids' friends, they eat junk, they're eating stuff, they're eating just whatever they can get their hands on. So we need to take this in our own hands as coaches and really talk to parents about this stuff and let them know how important it is, sleep and nutritional recovery, and really getting them to understand the amount of recovery that's needed. So I think it's individually based. I think athletes, when they do high-intensity work, high-speed work, they need to really make sure that they're recovered before they come back and do that again. But in our program, we like to, lift our lower body 1 day a week. We don't like to overdo our legs. And then we like to give our legs a couple days recovery before we come out and run. So we're really focused on recovery. Our program is based on recovery. It's all about recovery, and that's when we're really getting better.
Well, Bill, man, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day here. I know you're a busy guy, and you got a couple other things coming up here on the books today, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But, again, I really appreciate you kind of giving me the keys to the car here and giving me an opportunity to learn from you, not only on the podcast, but, just going back and forth through even texts or phone calls or emails or just, kind of point me in the right direction and getting me in touch with some guys here to really just give me an opportunity to learn and expand my horizons, my man. If anybody's on the show here and you heard us obviously talking about a couple cool concepts, and to be honest with you, I was taking notes as you were going at it, so I'm sure I'm going to fire a bunch of questions at you. But if anybody wanted to reach out to you personally or find out more about the Parisi Speed School franchise or just learn more about what you got going on, how could they go about reaching out to you?
Sure. Two ways. Our website, parisischool.com, and that's spelled the way it sounds, Parisi School, SCHOOL.com, or they can email me, bparisi@parisischool.com. Happy to help anybody out. And that's, quite frankly, that's why we started, licensing. We have a whole program to help people not only give them the training, but also the marketing, the business systems. My background, I have an undergraduate. I'm kind of a unique hybrid. I went to school. I have an undergraduate degree in finance. I was a two-time Division I track and field All-American athlete in 1989, 88, 89 at Iona, and then went to the Olympic trials. And so I've kind of blended the business and the training in one, and I believe that's one of the reasons why I was fortunate enough to be successful. But now we offer that in a licensing format, franchising format for people that have an interest. Happy to share more about that with them if they reach out. And if not, hey, we've got DVDs out there, we've got information out there to share. And too, ultimately I'm in this industry because I really love helping athletes, helping kids improve their performance, improve their self-esteem. I did my internship on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. I could have been a Wall Street guy. For me, it's not about the money. It's really about empowering people, motivating people, specifically kids. My passion, my niche is that 8 to 14 market. That's what really turns me on. And again, I've trained lots of high-level guys in my day, but when you empower a kid 8 to 14, man, you can make a difference in that kid's life in a big, big way. And that's what the Parisi Speed School is all about. If I can help anybody with training, I love it. I really enjoy it. Love the science of it. Love getting high-level guys better too. But I'll tell you what, I really love getting those younger kids faster, man. They can get a whole lot faster, and their lives can really light up.
Again, Bill, man, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day. Again, hopefully this is an opportunity for us to have a little bit of a launching pad to doing things on the road. And I'm looking forward to having a couple events here, doing a speaking opportunity for me and sharing your passion with others, man. Again, I tip my cap to all the things that you've done in the field and all the things that you will do moving forward to help young professionals become better as well as athletes and coaches alike. So, again, if anybody's got any questions, man, reach out to Bill. He does a great job sharing his passion in multiple different ways, and he always does a good job reaching out to me. So, man, Bill, I know you're busy, so I'm going to let you get off the phone here, and I hope all's well, man. Look forward to just keeping in touch and keep on doing what you're doing. Inspire others to keep greatness.
Thank you, Rob, and I appreciate the opportunity. You're doing a great job for this industry, too. And I say one last thing to everybody. Hey, go out there and make a child great today.